Well, good morning and welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Citizen Power Breakfast. My name is Michelle Morgan. Now, I am joined in studio by Ayub Savula. He is the chair of the Agri.Committee Committee, and he is also the MP for Lugari constituency in Kakamega County in Western Kenya. Now, Kakamega County is the second most populous county after Nairobi, that is, and it is renowned for its agriculture as a major activity, and noteworthy of that is sugarcane farming, which is practiced extensively. Mr. Savula, thank you very much for joining us, and a very warm welcome to Citizen Power Breakfast. So I'd like to start by what I just mentioned about sugarcane harvesting and farming. Now, I'd like to get your opinion on the performance of the sector and some of the challenges facing the sugarcane industry.
First of all, let me just give you a brief history of the sugar industry. We have 5 parastatal sugar companies: Sony, Miwani, Chemelil, Zoya Sugar, and Mohoroni. Then we have those ones which are private owned. That is Mumias, West Kenya, Butali, and Sukari mills. Out of the private owned companies, the government has only 20% in Mumias Sugar Company. The rest is a private capital. The paracetal factories are supposed to undergo what you call privatization process within the next seven months, so as to allow the COMESA to give Kenya an extension of the industrial reprieve against cheap sugar imports. If we don't show at least steps towards achieving that in the next 7 months, we're going to face a glut in the sugar, in the local market, and this glut is going to affect the common mwananchi who buys the sugar and the farmer, because he'll not be the companies not afford to pay them the cash, because sugar production in other COMESA countries per ton it costs 3,230 per ton. In Kenya, the cost of production is double, 6,272 per ton.
So why would you worry if there's a glut, there's commercial, and those factories closed? The only people who will be affected are the farmers who grow sugar.
No, the thing is,
the COMESA sugar comes here cheap.
When COMESA sugar comes in cheaper, first it will affect the tax collection at national level. We'll not be able to collect tax from the sugar sales because the sugar will be in the stores, it will be packed in stores. Second, workers in those factories will not be able to be paid.
And the farmers? And
the farmers will not be able to be paid. So actually, there will be a crisis in the sector in the next 7 months if we are not going to take actions from today.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm curious to find out a little bit more about what the challenges that these state parastatals, sugar milling companies are facing. As you said, is it high costs of production, inefficiency? What are the areas that need to be addressed to enable these companies to be able to become more efficient and effectively compete on an open market with other COMESA sugar imports?
I'll talk of 3 areas. First is small cane farming acreage, the small holdage. In other countries, COMESA countries, like Sudan here, cane is produced on commercial basis. But here in Kenya, you go to Mumias Sugar Belt, 2 acres, 1 acre, a farmer producing cane on 1 acre. But if you go to Sudan, a COMESA country, they produce cane on commercial basis. Second, the moribund machines. Look at Moroni. The machines, they're supposed to be sold as a scrap metal. They are too old. We need new technology in the industry. Thirdly, inefficiency management. Sony was run down. Mohoroni was run down. Chemelil has problems. Miwani is totally closed down. And Miwani is also facing so many court cases between the government and a private investor. So all these things need to be sorted out so that we can restructure the industry. So what I believe in and what COMESA spirit is. Let's allow private capital to be injected in this paracetamol. Let the government move out so that we can now revamp them and turn them into profit-making machines.
If the problem is the low acreage and a private company comes there, how do we increase farmers' output for the sugar?
We have a best example like Miwani. They have the huge nuclear estate, a huge nuclear estate, but there's no machine there. There's nothing that is running there. Then you go back to areas like Mumias. They have a war, West Kenya and Mumias Sugar. We need to introduce regulation in the sugar industry so that a factory is located 50 kilometers radius from the other factory so that they don't compete on the limited cane availability in that area. Because cane is produced on small holding.
Okay, now you had asked the government to sell the 5 state-owned sugar mills before the COMESA expiry. So I'd like to know, what is the progress of this privatization and liberalization, and is this likely to happen before the deadline?
I'm not sure it's going to happen before the deadline, but as a committee we'll have to push the government to ensure that it meets the process done within that 7-period time. First, I met the Privatization Commission. I had a meeting with them. The Cabinet Secretary in charge of Treasury and Agriculture are coming to meet the committee on Thursday this week. We want to know where the progress is. But I know they have done the evaluation of the sugar factories, but they did the evaluation 1 year or 2 years ago. So they have to value afresh the facilities because the value has gone up. After that, then they will start now the public tender. So then the highest bidder will be given the opportunity to buy the factory. But only after confirming that bidder, does he have the capacity to purchase the factory.
Okay.
Is there a problem of finding a buyer?
There is no problem in finding a buyer, but the most strategic issue in this is getting a good strategic partner. The ones that will partner in, and he has experience, he has a background information on how to run the sugar factory. Does
the country know who these kind of people, the possible buyers?
If
either the industry or your committee or the government or ministry? Does anybody know who are likely?
Possibly we look at the countries that are giants in sugar production. What do they do?
Benchmarking.
The benchmarking. Then we'll do expression of interest so that we get the best to inject private capital in this paracetamol.
Okay, maybe you can put this into context for us. Now, the COMESA deadline is set to lapse on March 2014. So if this happens without an extension being given, what is the likely effect going to be on the local sugar industry and to Kenyans buying sugar?
You remember, let me give an example of Mumias. There's a time when the COMESA, you know Kenya is a signatory to the COMESA protocol. There's a time when the sugar from COMESA market used to flood the local market, Kenyan industry. All our sugar factories were unable to sell. I remember that time the minister in charge of trade was Dr. Mohisa Kitui, and the CEO of Kenya Sugar Board was Andrew Olotieno. They went and pleaded with the COMESA Council of Ministers that give us a reprieve for 5 years. We restructure our sugar industry so that you can be competitive, then allow the COMESA sugar to come into the local market. We are given the 5-year reprieve. It expired. We had not done anything in terms of improving efficiency, in terms of increasing productivity, in terms of doing serious farm extension. We are given another 1 year, another 2 years, that are expiring in March 2014. After March 2014, Kenya Revenue Authority will open the gates. The sugar will come in duty-free completely. You look at our production costs and the production costs in other COMESA countries. The sugar will arrive in Mombasa at half the price that Kenya produces. So a consumer in the local market, will he go for an expensive good or a cheaper good of the same quantity? He will go for a cheaper good.
So for consumers, it's a good thing.
For consumers, it's a good thing. But we are looking at employment. The poverty levels among farmers.
Why should we sustain unproductivity or inefficiency? Or why?
That's why we need.
Why can't they just close?
That's why we need to inject private capital and professionalism in the 5 parastatals. Actually, you know, the 5 parastatals are owned by the government. And you know, government has no serious professionalism when it comes to running.
The government has no business growing sugar anyway.
Yeah, that's why they are supposed to move out.
Supposed to govern.
I suppose my question is, you said that they had 5 years. That was extended by another 2 years.
Another 2 years.
And now they're seeking another year. I mean, cumulatively, this is, it just seems like, will is never-ending extensions continue? Are we actually going to see anything happen in such a short period, in 1 year, if it wasn't able to happen in 7 years?
If you look at the current constitutional structure, gives a lot powers a committee of parliament collectively. It's a committee of parliament that is supposed to oversight the process of executive implementation of decisions. Now we have powers. A committee of parliament now is equivalent to a high court judge sitting. So in the next 7 months, we'll demand from Privatization Commission, what steps are you taking? Give us the documentation. Where have you reached? We ask the CS, what is the Commercial Council of Ministers saying? Because we are elected to represent the people. And we have to ensure that this process is done within that period. Even if they don't sell the whole 5 parastatals sugar factories, at least they dispose of 2 to prove to Commercial that we are in the process of doing ABCD.
Why has it been impossible to sell anyway?
The Privatization Commission had not put all the programs in process. Parliament did not pass the privatization laws. There are no structures to govern the entire process also. So that's what we're going to work on jointly with the cabinet.
So can you tell us a little bit about what the progress is to date? You know, how likely is it that this extension will be granted?
It's so difficult to grant an extension. Actually, chances are less than 20%, because the Privatization Commission has valued the factories, but the valuation was done 1 year or 2 years ago. We need to revalue afresh. We have not advertised for expression of interest. You know, the procurement process, the period it takes. The list of those parastatals that are supposed to be privatized are supposed to be tabled in Parliament. Parliament approves before the government disposes of. So chances of succeeding are close to 20–30% there.
You are the chairman of Agricultural Parliamentary Committee.
Yes.
That it is not only sugar. What about other sectors of agriculture?
Other sectors of agriculture. You remember the 10th Parliament passed a law called Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Crop Act that was supposed to create Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Crop Authority. Recently in Parliament, we extended the commencement date of that law by another 6 months to allow the Cabinet Secretary to put structures in place that will allow for the setting up of the board that will run that AFA is called AFA, Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Authority, that will regulate the entire agricultural sector. But that act will collapse Kenya Sugar Board, it will collapse Coconut Board, it will collapse Pyrethrum Board, it will collapse Tea Board, Coffee Board. At least 10 parastatal under that will follow under one person called the Director General. The Director General will be the CEO, appointed competitively by the board. We are supposed to have 8 directors across the country. The 8 directors, we don't have structures on how to elect the 8 directors. The Cabinet Secretary took over the office 3 months ago. So he's not in a position to put in place all these structures immediately. And you see, another thing, the chairman of that board is supposed to be appointed by the president and approved by Parliament. We cannot do those things in the next, actually, 24th is when?
A couple of days.
Wednesday. So we cannot do this thing in the next 2 days. That's why we extended the commencement date from July 24th to December 24th to give him time to reorganize. and have the structures in place and appoint the 8 directors, have the 8 directors elected actually, and have a CEO in place and a chairman in place to run the organization.
Okay, I just want to touch back on the sugar industry, because it's quite fundamentally important to discuss this so that we all have a better understanding of the issues at hand. Now, the Kenya Sugar Board has put together a 5-year strategic plan to approach this liberalization of the sector. What is the progress of that to date, and what is the impact going to be if this extension, this COMESA extension, is not granted?
If the COMESA extension is not guaranteed, Kenya should forget about the sugar industry completely. Because if I bring my product to the market, I sell it at 2 bob, and you are bringing your product to the market and selling double the price, where will the consumer go? And the products of same quantity, quality, and quantity. So Kenya should forget about the sugar industry.
What impact is that going to have?
Economically, on taxation, consumable tax, it will reduce. Because Kenya Sugar Board has what we call a sugar development levy that is collected at a consumer level. Let me just try and go deep in the issues of levies. What the Constitution says, consumable levies, the levy that is charged on a commodity in the market that affect the national interest, is called the national levy, national tax. So sugar development levy is a national tax. But you see, governors, they say sugar development levy should go back to their regions. Its sugar development levy is charged at consumer level. A consumer is in Mombasa, a consumer is in Kisumu, a consumer is in Wajir, is taking sugar. That levy that is charged at national level is a national levy. What governors should concentrate on is a levy that is charged at the county level. That's a cess levy for road maintenance and all other things. In the maize sector also, I'll just diverting a bit on that issue. The maize sector, governors are demanding to be given money to buy maize crop like in North Rift, South Rift, or part of Western Kenya where the food crop is ready. But that's not their mandate. If you read Schedule 4, the 4th schedule of the country's constitution, you will see explicitly the functions of county government explained in terms of agriculture. Purchase of maize is a strategic reserve of nation, the national government, to meet the national strategic reserve. It's not the function of a governor to buy maize. It's the function of the national government to ensure there's food security, feed its own people by purchasing the maize from farmers and storing in case of a crisis. Let me go back to the issue you said they've talked about the sugar. We have to protect the interests of the farmers. Where will the farmers take their cane? When Mumia's West Kenya, Butali, is unable to buy the cane, where will it take the cane? Because of the flooded local market with the imported sugar. Where will the companies get money to pay the employees, the workers? Several families depend on workers in Mumia Sugar, in Zoya, in Soni, in Chemelil, and all over.
But we have seen, you have told us we are superintending on inefficiency. For years, we are only being threatened because the COMESA sugar is coming. Otherwise, if there were no corners the sugar, we'll just continue that way, buying expensive stuff that should be cheap, just like our production of maize. If we get maize from maybe Brazil or wherever, it's cheaper.
But
so if you're not producing efficiency, why should we continue? Me as a consumer, I would rather have the sugar from COMESA. I would rather have the maize from Brazil.
Actually, Mutegi, let me be a bit crude. We have a generational change in leadership in this country, generational change. What you used to see before, you'll not see it from now and in the future. Because I'm 35 years. The generation that is following me, they want to see, is this man as the chairman of agriculture performing? And you know, there are so many parameters where you can measure the performance. But the old crop and the old generation of leadership that was there in this country, we didn't have what you call the technology that is there now. Go on Twitter now. If you're doing nonsense, you'll be told you're doing nonsense. Did we have that before?
There's greater accountability.
Greater accountability now because of generational change and technological factors.
So are you saying that you've got greater confidence
in
this privatization happening because of the new government and the sort of change of leadership?
It will happen. It's a generational change. It will happen. The old crop of leadership is out, it's new generation, and it will happen.
Isn't it possible that your committee, you seem to have a lot of faith in your committee in the way you can force the state or the cabinet secretary to do his job?
If you look at the constitution, Article 152, you'll see the powers of a committee and the process under which a committee can initiate a process to fire a cabinet secretary if he's not performing. You only need a member of a National Assembly, not even a member of that committee, any member, supported by one quarter of the entire parliament, to initiate a motion to fire a cabinet secretary who is not performing. And if the motion goes through, the president has no option but to fire the cabinet secretary. He has no option. The constitution is very explicit on that. He has no option but to fire him.
What do you say?
So the constitutional changes that took place are going to help this country, even in this sugar sector, to revamp it so that we allow private capital to be injected in.
Why don't you tell the Meru people who grow Miraa that the British government has decided not to take it?
I can tell you, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has not been classified for direct flights from the US to land here, because it has been under investigations of drug-related issues, the crime in Kenya, all those. This is not the first time the Britons are doing that. 7 years ago, they did the same thing to was it Mozambique? I'm not sure, the African country. But what we need to do as a committee on agriculture, let's not just phase out Miraa at a go. Let's do it gradually as we give them alternative crop. Tea performs very well in that. Those
same soil.
Areas, same soil.
Soil.
But let's not just do away with Miraa at a go. Give them alternatives slowly by slowly. This thing should take a gradual period, even 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
So have you actually embarked on sort of diversifying what these Miraa farmers have been traditionally farming, rearing, which is Miraa, and actually introducing them to, as you're saying, sort of other options of farming? Has that been undertaken by your committee?
Actually, it's not under agriculture committee per se, but there's a select committee that has been formed by the National Assembly, and I was supposed to be in Meru from yesterday. The committee is Meru working from today, looking at the impact of Miraa, what we need to do. So they will compile a report and bring to Parliament. We adopt or reject. But my view is we need to take this thing gradually, so that in 10 years, 5 years time, we retain Miraa now, but we start facing off slowly, depending on the impact the Miraa has on the consumers, the farmers, because I'm sure that is the main economic livelihood of the Meru people. So you cannot just come and chop off their life like that. You have to give them alternative, but alternative comes gradually. Yeah. But
I mean, some of these alternatives, as you mentioned, tea, etc., possibly wouldn't have the same margins as Miraa farming would. So what would you say to people's skepticism about the fact that, you know, they're really losing something that is quite a lucrative crop for them?
You know, when major market for Kenyan commodities are affected, like we say when the UK talk about banning the Miraa, actually African countries, you have no alternative but to look for a way out. If you look at major economies in Africa, like South Africa, they don't actually depend on the small holding farmings. What they have done, they have industrialized their country. And if we achieve Vision 2030, we'll not be talking about Britain telling us, ban this, do this. We'll be independent. That's the way we should be looking at.
Okay.
As a chairman of the Agricultural Committee, are you happy with the operations of National Cereals Board? They're supposed to be the main takers of agricultural production, particularly maize, and see the way it is now being done?
I'll explain to you the two things. National Cereal and Produce Board is an institution that was held under hostage by two different ministries. I don't know why the previous government did that. National Cereals and Produce Board was a store for strategic maize reserve under the Ministry of Special Programs. At the same time, it's an agent for supply of fertilizer to farmers under the Ministry of Agriculture. So one institution reporting to different authorities. But now it has been streamlined. Strategic maize reserve has moved from special program is under agriculture. And then agriculture also coordinates the fertilizer purchase program. The mandate of NCPB, National Cereal and Produce Board, is not to procure fertilizer. Fertilizer is procured by the Ministry of Agriculture. NCPB is only given fertilizer to distribute as an agent. The issue that is in court now over the 500 million dispute is not an issue of NCPB. It's an issue of the Ministry of Agriculture and Special Program. I've seen several correspondence from the previous ministers, how the deal went sour, how they were unable to supply the maize. Then what these guys are suing for is
Loss of business.
Loss of business, because the contract was not respected.
Breach of contract.
Yeah, breach of contract. But nevertheless, as a committee of the House, we have mandate to investigate up to a certain level. Recently at the PIC committee, the AG gave his opinion, the Attorney General of the Republic, that we wait for the case that is pending in court, the determination of the case, how it will go, then we can now decide. Because it's principle of separation of power. When the case is still in court, there's nothing a parliament will do. That's a court case. Let's wait for the case to be finalized, then we'll go by the finding or the decision of the court.
Okay, well, we have been discussing a variety of issues, and notably has been sugar, which is a basic commodity. Now, with the proposed VAT bill, we're going to see a 16% increase in basic commodities. Now, the Committee of Agriculture, Livestock and Cooperatives has withdrawn their support of the bill, which, as we said, is seeking to introduce 16% tax. So what is your view on the bill, and what would you like to see exempt?
This issue has been politicized, actually. As a committee, you've said we will not support anything to do with imposing 16% VAT on unga. But if you look at the consumers of unga who pay 16% VAT, who are going to pay, it's me and you, the employed. The people who are in the top class, the people who live in urban areas like Nairobi, Mombasa, the people who can afford.
What about people who live in slums and urban areas?
People who live in slums.
What do they eat?
They have portion meals. The portion meals, you don't charge 16 VAT on portion meals in the village.
So they buy maize and put in the mill?
Yeah, and they don't go
to
the supermarket. So that has been controlled. This is not an issue that is going to affect a common man. So even if they impose 16% VAT on unga, it's me and you who are going to offset that 16% VAT, not a common mwananchi in Kibera, not a common mwananchi in my constituency in Lugari. Because his unga is from the posho mill.
So in that way, you're saying that you're not entirely opposed to it? Let's just wrap it up in a nutshell for us.
You know, politics, when you play rough, you counter it by roughness. So this politics being played. You say now they're imposing 16% VAT on unga, or you're going to hurt the common man. But that's not the case. The common man will not suffer because of this 16% VAT in the village, in Lugari there. His unga is from But for the sake of the public image, that this committee is supporting the imposition of 16% VAT on maize, on unga, will not support that only.
Okay, very interesting.
If
Well,
you look at sugar, there is double taxation on sugar, but Kenyans don't know. You pay VAT. You pay VAT on production level, at the can level, VAT on sugar, when you're paying sugar development levy. At consumer level, you also pay VAT. So there's double application of VAT on sugar. And you see, when they talk about sugar being taxed 16% VAT, we're already paying 60% VAT on sugar. So no one should lie to the public that sugar is exempted from tax.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. I think that's news to a lot of us. It's news to me anyway. But I would like to thank you very much for coming on the show, Mr. Savula. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and welcome back again in future. We'll be curious to see what the progress is with this COMESA deadline and the privatization of the sugar industry. So thank you very much. So there you have it, our interview with Ayub Savula. Thank you very much. So that's our interview. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back at the top of the hour with more news stories.